Hello and welcome to your in-depth monthly horoscope for May 2023 for the Sun or the Ascendant. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to give a collective overview and some standout details, but then I will go through each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces and explore those in much greater depth. Now, if you are a returning viewer to my channel, thank you so much for joining me once more. If you're new here, it's great to have you with us. This is very much a community, so please do share any thoughts you have. I do interact with each one, and I'd be honoured if you would subscribe. Now, if you would like to ascend above zodiac astrology and get a much greater understanding of your life force and prospects, if you do give me 3 pieces of personal birth data of time, date and place of birth, I can prepare for you your life roadmap report. This will give you an understanding of the patterns that are repeating in your life, the more challenging ones, but also the ones that you can seize upon more successfully so. Gaining a greater awareness of those will help you to make greater progress, gain greater traction. And in my special package of 30% off, you can also get your 12-month personal forecast. No 2 charts are the same, totally unique to you, and can give you searing insights. If you don't know your time of birth, I've developed a new report package which doesn't include an ascendant and assumes the moon at midday, and this is based on your sun sign. And if you really enjoy YouTube videos, this will be very reflective of what your sun is. Please see below for more information on that too. Now, as we come into this very important month for resources, the economy, everyday money, the cost of living, we do have a conjunction, an exact cazimi as it's known, between the Sun and Mercury on day 1. And that could give us the opportunity, despite the fact that Mercury is in retrograde, to rethink something in a more successful way. But it is true to say that through the first 3 days, the Sun and Mercury are very closely aligned. Now, Mercury comes out of its retrograde on the 15th, but it doesn't come out of its post-retrograde shadow until the 31st. So this theme of finances is going to be quite consistent through the month. Also on the 5th, we have a lunar eclipse. This lunar eclipse is in Scorpio. If this seems to ring a bell, if we think back to last 8th of November, we had a lunar eclipse in Taurus. So this is the mirror image of that eclipse. And I feel it's going to give us a lot of clues as to how things will start to move forwards in terms of those economic trends. Because this one also features the disruptor planet of Uranus. In fact, in week 2 of this month, the Sun is very close to Uranus. And this is pushing us to evolve. Society and the world of work, for example, is changing at the speed of light. Trying to resist it is not necessarily going to be the best way forwards. And of course, the sign of Taurus is very much about trying to adhere to what's stable and gives us a sense of security and is consistent. And I think that could prove a little bit futile. But on the 7th, Venus, the planet which governs the sign of Taurus, moves from the quick-witted and flirty Gemini, where it is for the first week, and moves into the home-loving and security-loving sign of Cancer. And it will be there through to the end of the month. If there are any hopes to improve where you live or move or add to the family, they're boosted by that transition. It is true to say, however, that at that precise moment, Venus is in what's known as a quincunx with Pluto, a 150-degree angle. So anything around a romantic situation needs to take into account what the motives are, and Pluto often disguises those motives and uses charm or money in order to get its way. So just be conscious of that. But in week 2, we do have that conjunction between the Sun and Uranus that I spoke of before. So being flexible in our approach to resources is absolutely vital. Mercury goes direct on the 15th. On the 16th, so Jupiter moves into the sign of Taurus after Jupiter's rather eccentric journey through the signs of Aquarius, Pisces and Aries in the last couple of years. Now, Jupiter in the sign of Taurus is very positive for the economy. I think it's a much more self-confident position, and that's something to savour. But on the 19th, we have a new moon in the sign of Taurus, which is quite late, and therefore it links up with Pluto. Now, Pluto started its retrograde at the start of this month, but in this particular equation is a force for good, and also Neptune and Mars are feeding into the new moon in a very positive way. I think there is going to be better news. We all know that bonds, government bonds, have taken quite a hammering over the last few months, and equities have stood up quite well. But I think there is going to be some better news. Inflation will potentially come down. People will start to feel a bit less oppressed. Energy prices hopefully will also drop too. But the 20th does see the rather charismatic energies of Mars in Leo begin. And this is going to be really important because, of course, we've got a long journey of Venus in the sign of Leo this year, a 4-month transit. And Mars moving into Leo is quite the show-off. So if you are someone who's interested in performance, in music, amateur dramatics, you have a creative talent that you want to manifest, then this can be a very important transit. But I should say that across weeks 2 and 3, Mars in late Cancer and then early Leo is going to be face to face with Pluto. And that's not so good, I feel, in terms of perhaps the potential for increased tension around domination. And domination these days seems to be played out on the world stage by very aggressive policies to do with nationalism. So hopefully this is not going to be a spark of some kind of increase in violence on the world stage. But Mars opposite Pluto is, you know, the two ruling planets of Scorpio. This is kind of like the OK Corral, but on the world stage. And I think obviously with the potential for some big clashes in terms of cultures, that is a little bit concerning. But if there is somebody that you were really attuned to in a sexual sense, this is going to heighten the desire motivation hugely. Now on the 21st, the Sun does make its way into the speedy and quick-witted and flirty Gemini, where it will be for the last 10 days of the month. But the ruler of the sign of Gemini, Mercury, is actually forging from the 6th through to the 28th, a fabulous link with Saturn. And Saturn in Pisces may be a more thoughtful energy, and maybe one that asks us to grapple with our emotions more. But I feel that it's important to understand, you know, the past investment of time, energy and emotion or care that have gone into certain situations, and to see the benefits that those things can have in terms of the more physical plane. Now, it is also the case that the Sun is going to be forging an extremely charismatic link with Mars across weeks 3 and 4 and the last few days of the month. Now, this is going to go across 4 zodiac signs because both are going to be moving. So that's exciting in itself. The first one, between Taurus and Cancer, is very much about working with the emotional plane in terms of how we feel in terms of physical security. But once the Sun bustles its way into the air sign of Gemini, and Mars moves into the very grand and proud fire sign of Leo, I think it all gets much more outgoing and much more extrovert. So I think there can be quite a social dimension that really develops towards the end of this month. Also, the Sun forges a trine, again across 4 zodiac signs, with Pluto from the 19th through to the 24th. So some big evolutions can go on in our situations. With Pluto, it can be inner changes, or it can be the more physical world around us. But I think what we can all expect is things to speed up and become more exciting. But once Mercury comes to the end of its post-retrograde shadow on the 31st, then we're really going to be seeing a real sign of green shoots, I feel, when it comes to resources, as long as there is no big combustible event in terms of countries really getting into conflict towards the end of this month as Mars and Pluto face up. But essentially this is a month where I feel that the lunar eclipse provides a mirror for the next 6 months. So by the time we get around to the 8th of November this year, I think we will have worked our way through quite a lot of readjustments. And obviously the cost of living increase has been extremely painful for a lot of people and is not to be something that commented on in a light way. But I think as we get around to the end of the influence of this particular lunar eclipse, we really will see things starting to unwind and we get a clearer picture, and hopefully things will become a lot more affordable for a lot more people, and there'll be greater liquidity around all of our finances and a greater sense of security. But of course the sign of Taurus is not just about money, it's all about our self-worth too, and also our sense of physical security. So if there are ways that we can be a bit thriftier or make the most of food that we cook ourselves, get more earthy in our approach to life in general, that can be a great way to surf the energies that this incredible month does provide for us. Now please stay with me as I go through each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces. So Libra, as May begins, so Pluto starts its retrograde. And this is going to see it return to the 4th house of home and emotion, of course, on the 11th of June. But it is still in the creative part of your situation, the 5th house this month. And it's essentially asking you to be very mindful of romantic relationships, your relationships with children, but also the social world. Pluto was such a punishing transit over the last 15 years. So I think that most Libran people would be a little bit aware of how powerful it can be. But of course your ruling planet is Venus, and in the first week of this month it's actually in a great location for you to explore, check out the truth of your relationships. But it does move on the 7th into a very visible part of your situation, the 10th house. This could see you through to the end of the month wanting a firmer position. If there is someone that you've been seeing, you're wanting them to be more visible in articulating what they feel about you. But it is forging a 150-degree quincunx with Pluto. So frustration is probably not the best way forwards. And also because there's so much energy in a very transformational part of your situation this month, the 8th house, there may be part of you that's almost aching for something to evolve in a constructive way. And it can, but I think also there's going to be some stuff around longer term finances. The lunar eclipse is threaded into the disruptive energies of Uranus, and of course also we have the retrograde in this area too. And all this starts to unravel in a more obvious way from the 15th when Mercury goes direct, but also on the 16th Jupiter arrives in Taurus. So the 8th house can be about intimacy, not just about long-term finance or business or property or legacies. So Jupiter also butts up against the energies of Pluto. So I think all the lessons that have been learned in recent years, there could be a potential to sort of be a bit defensive if things don't quite go as you hope around relationships this month. But I think it's a case of seeing the big picture, that the evolution that's going on in your world is actually an opportunity to clear out the mental attitudes, perhaps some of the people that no longer work for you, perhaps to be more aware of how to make your resources work for you constructively. There's actually a really excellent new moon on the 19th, which picks up on the upbeat vibe of Jupiter from the 16th. So there's a lot to go for in a constructive way, and then bang, on the 20th, Mars moves into a very dynamic location for you, going in to the most sociable part of your situation. But it is, for the first 3 weeks of this month, still giving you a lot of ability to articulate your confidence, your authority, but I think then it gets more sociable. So the last 10 days of this month, with the Sun arriving in Gemini on the 21st, and the Sun and Mars linking so constructively, suggests that things move from this deep and intense stuff earlier in the month, and perhaps to do with money and business, to then later in the month to be much more about liberation, fun, expansion, and something really exciting can start to evolve for you, particularly with the Sun and Mars in such a fantastic linkage in the final days of May.